How are you this lovely Monday? Thank you for joining me. We are continuing to read this amazing book called My Father Knew the Secret. I don't know if you've figured out the secret by now, or if you've actually read the book, or if you've read other books like Rhonda Byrne's The Secret and other forms of learning what that secret is. But I'll tell you one thing, it works and it's alive and well. I'm just going to bounce right in and continue. We are on page 128. I'm really hoping that you're getting a lot out of this book reading, whether you're on the other side of the world or whether you're just down the road, or whether you've been a client of mine or whether you're thinking about it or not. Maybe you're someone else's client, but thank you for joining me on this book reading, because I do believe that the information in here shared with us from Brian Proctor, being raised by Bob, is the information a lot of you are looking for. I know this is a one hell of a noisy world, and I know there's so many people like myself saying, I can help you, I can help you. You can be successful this way, that way, you can do this, you can do that. And quite honestly, you're stuck and paralyzed because there's so much out there. I get that. I just pray for you that you have that intuition, that inner knowing, that what you follow and what you do listen to is what you need to hear. That's all you can do, is trust your intuition and your own gut. So with that, let's continue on. At the very top, it says Clouds, chapter 7, Making an Impression. This is a quote. The magnificence of the mind is that it can tap into thought and create whatever image it chooses. Bob Proctor. When I was a young boy, Dad and I would lie on our backs out on the lawn and stare at the summer sky. I can still remember the feeling of the cool grass on my skin and the warm sun on my face. It was always when the sky was filled with white puffy clouds slowly floating by that Dad would say, "Let's go practice." He would tell me, "Brian, pick a cloud and let's make it disappear." At that age, I never questioned him and just went with it. Once we had a clear, small cloud picked out, he instructed me to focus all my attention on that cloud. Then he told me to send warm energy and picture the cloud burning away into nothing. At first, I thought this was just a little silly, but that said, Dad's way of learning was infectious. You couldn't help but get caught up in his passion. In no time at all, we were making small clouds disappear. The first time it happened, I thought it was just the winds making them go away. But as we kept picking out other clouds and sending warm energy and focus, they were the only clouds fading away. We were really doing it. I remember telling the other kids at school about it, and they thought I was crazy. And that was okay. Looking back on this, the entire experience was whimsical and enjoyable. Later in my life, I realized what my father had taught me. In a fun way, he cleared a path to show me how to focus my thoughts on one thing for an extended period of time. As a result, I learned at a young age about the power of concentration and strengthening my will, which has served me well all my life. There's a picture of Bob and his palms. He loved those palms. Page 131, consider, how is your power of concentration and focus? Can you hold one thought in your mind to the exclusion of all other distractions? Holding more than one thought in your mind creates confusion, and giving your entire focus to a singular thought creates an energy that will grow that thought. You are now, and you will become, what you think about most often. An exercise Dad gave us that was meant to develop one's ability to focus was what he called the candle exercise. He would suggest placing a lit candle opposite your favorite chair. Next, turn off all the lights and other distractions, including your phone, and focus all your attention on that flame. After a few seconds, your mind may start to wander. When you notice this happening, simply bring your mind and focus back to the flame. Don't worry about the fact that your mind is wandering. Instead, gently bring your attention back to the flame. Focus is a necessity, is a necessary skill set for achievement. This exercise will help you strengthen your ability to concentrate on one thing at the exclusion of all others. Where attention goes, energy flows. You are training yourself in the process of manifestation through focused intention. Here's a place for notes. Like I said, if you don't have this book, get it. Go to brianproctor.com and his link will be there. There's a great picture of Bob. That's better. At his office. We're on to chapter 8 called Mindset. Purpose, passion, and persistence. Quote, the only limits in our life are those we impose on ourselves. End quote, Bob Proctor. Dad made it easy to be with him and experience how he earned a living. I was always proud when watching him work with a small group or teach from the stage with thousands of people listening, watching how he engaged with the audience, whether large or small, and how the audience was hungry for the message he was sharing, reinforced how fortunate I was to be his audience of one so often. I've had a front row seat my entire life, seeing how Bob Proctor made a difference in the world. During a breakfast we had together while in Los Angeles in 2019, he asked me about this book. He was curious about how I was progressing with my writing and encouraged me to ask him questions to spark thinking and ideas for the chapters. On this day, I wanted him to tell me about when we left Chicago. So I asked why in 1974 did we move from Chicago back to Canada, and why to the small town of Belleville? His answer surprised me and taught me more about Bob Proctor, the man and father. He said he was tired of always being on the road and wanted a simpler life for himself and his family. The funny thing is, Dad loved to work. It was his purpose and passion. In fact, it was when he was not working that he would actually get restless. So that short-lived move to Belleville ended up not being about a simpler life. Instead, it became about taking time to reflect and examine priorities. I think he was tired. He worked hard, and in my memory, he was always working. The man you saw on stage was very much the man I grew up with. Dad liked to tell a funny story about my younger brother Raymond. Whenever someone asked Ray what it was like to grow up with Bob Proctor, Ray replied, every dinner is a seminar, which was true. Dad's passion did not turn off at home. He wanted us to understand and apply the material he was learning and teaching as much as he wanted you to. Once we made the move to Belleville, Dad quickly discovered the small town living was not for him, and he definitely was not. It was definitely not the place to build a business base. He wasn't in sync with his inner self. So, 8 months later, we moved to Toronto and to a larger market with more opportunities. My father needed to get back on track with his purpose, but this move to Toronto was made with a lot of intention around the needs of everyone in that family. I admire him for following his dream without sacrificing the family's needs. The persistence it took to build his business and reputation to where it was when he passed at 87 is extraordinary, and it truly speaks to his strength of character. In the late 1960s, the concept of self-development was new and was not widely understood, very different from today. He worked long hours, and much of the time we just got by. There were many struggles in those early days, many rejections. People were not open to the idea of self-improvement. It wasn't something the greater population was even thinking about. Trying to sell and teach professional and personal development in those early days was like swimming upstream. But Dad remained committed to creating value. He knew the information that had changed his life would help others. He knew it was the ticket to meaning and fulfillment. When I was dad, when I was young, Dad would return home from a long day and remind me that persistence plays a role in every success. I think that by reminding me, he was reminding himself. Persistence is a unique mental strength essential to combat the fierce power of repeated rejections and numerous other obstacles that sit in waiting. Dad could say this with such conviction because he was experiencing it. In the beginning, before we moved to Chicago, Dad was working in Toronto as a distributor for Nightingale Conant. This meant he was lugging around a heavy case door to door that was filled with records and printed material. I remember him saying one night that he was going to find a way to sell these products or he would be eating them. That is when it struck him that what he needed to be doing was not focusing on the products, but instead selling the idea of how these products could create change. Despite the obstacles early on, young Bob Proctor always had a vision of what his life and business would grow into. He kept focused on his big, scary, and exciting goal, and he took action every day. After he had realized the realization about selling the idea of change, it wasn't long before he was the top distributor of Nightingale Conant. When I asked about Chicago that day at breakfast, he told me that it wasn't always easy, but it also wasn't hard because he loved it. and that very and that every rejection and bad day was worth it. In fact, they were necessary. He reminded me that when we walked into the seminar room that day in Los Angeles, he would see the fruits of his labor in front of him. First, he had seen it in his mind, and now he was seeing the physical manifestation of that vision and goal. That belief that everyone needed this information never changed for him. That is what this work has always been about about my father, helping people to understand that they possess greatness and can create real and meaningful change in their life. Consider, can you think of a current or past challenge in your life? We often realize what we are capable of when we're challenged. That is when we understand that we are capable of much more than we've ever realized. I have an exercise for you. Write out a challenge you have had in your life or one that you are currently dealing with. Include your thoughts and feelings about it. Include how it made you feel and how you feel about it now. Next, make a numbered list from 1 to 5 and add 5 things you learned from that challenge. Now add the numbers 6 to 10 and list 5 things you will do differently because of what you've learned. Leave that on your desk and look at it each day for a week. Can you add to your list? Do you see how the challenge was an opportunity in disguise? What I know. Watching my dad over the years, seeing the struggles, witnessing his commitment and persistence despite losses, plus his wins, ingrained in me that we can become our greatest desire if we hold our vision despite outside circumstances and failures. You're capable of more than you may think. Use all the challenges and changes you experienced as tools and learn to look forward to every experience in life as an opportunity to grow and learn. All about the chalkboard. You've seen that a few times on different videos and such. Quote, from the habit of always form the habit of always doing your best. Quote unquote, Bob Proctor. Long before computers and PowerPoint, my dad turned to classroom tools to help him deliver his message visually. If you have seen any YouTube videos of You Were Born Rich program, then you know what tool my father used to visually get his message out while speaking. It was a chalkboard. He was an artist with that chalkboard. When he drew a circle to represent the mind, it had to be flawless. It was it was art in the making to watch him draw that circle on the board using the side of a piece of chalk. Not only was the teaching invaluable, but watching him use that prop was pure entertainment and, in my mind, genius. I had watched him practice making that circle over and over and over for years until he felt he could do it with one movement, and it flowed exactly with delivery and timing. When Dad was teaching, it was essential to him that he was able to convey his message as simply as possible so that anyone could understand and apply it. That was part of his effectiveness and influence. It was his brilliance. That chalkboard was his partner in transferring his message. He would explain to the audience how he saw the mind of everyone sitting in that room as a clean slate, like the chalkboard. And if it wasn't a good image, they wouldn't get a good picture. In the beginning, when he conducted a seminar, he would use whatever chalkboard the venue had left on hand. Unfortunately, they were usually cheap and small. It was tough to get those boards clean because the surface was worn out and typically pretty beat up. I remember Dad getting frustrated with the quality of those boards, and he decided it was time to invest in his own. In no time, he had a high quality chalkboard made precisely to his specifications without considering how we would transport this thing from seminar to seminar. The final creation was big. It was 6 feet wide and 4 feet high, cumbersome and heavy. He also had a unique and heavy stand constructed that the board would sit on. He then had an enormous, crazy looking metal container welded together that went on a roof rack so that he could transport the chalkboard on the roof of his car. He reached a point where he would not go anywhere without that chalkboard if he was going on stage. It didn't matter how far away the next venue was, he was on the road with that crazy contraption on the top of his car. Not only was that thing awkward to carry, but if it was windy outside, it could really pull you around a parking lot. Add Toronto snow and biting cold to the equation, and you have the makings of a comedy skit. You risked frostbite if you weren't careful and touched the metal frame around the board without your gloves. We got plenty of looks hauling that thing around and had plenty of laughs. The other non negotiable for Dad was the dustless chalk and very specific towels he needed. He ordered the towels from a beauty supply chain, and Gina carried a large case of that chalk in her vehicle at all times. Dad would clean the chalkboard with his special towels at least 8 to 10 times during a 3 hour event. But again, the images he drew on that board represented the audience's mind. And that board had to be spotless so he could draw the perfect image. And that is where the towels came in. They needed to be moistened exactly right, not too wet, not too dry, so they would effectively clean the board and allow it to dry quickly, and he could use it immediately after cleaning. And only Bob Proctor knew the perfect water cotton ratio needed to execute this operation. I'd often see him leaning over the back of the stage, wringing out towels Gina and I had prepared in advance. In those days, we frequently held preview seminars at the same hotel in the northwest end of Toronto. These were free events that anyone could attend. Dad would teach for roughly 3 hours and then promote an upcoming program that he would run one night a week for the following 8 weeks. Oh, how the internet has changed things. When preparing the room, Gina and I would set up the chalkboard on the stage and position it just as he liked, or so we thought. He would tweak its position and angle it until he felt he had it right. Then we would stand at the back of the room and smile when he came in before the event started. We would watch Dad go on the stage, set out his books, and look around. Without fail, he would adjust that chalkboard by an inch. We came to understand that he needed to make the final adjustment. He needed to be the last one to touch it. That chalkboard was his friend and partner. It was his vehicle for transporting his message. Years later, when the chalkboard was long gone, Gina and I shared with Dad our version of the chalkboard circus and his peculiarities with it. He had a great laugh over that one. I called Gina when I wrote this story, and we had so much fun looking back at that time together. She reminded me that we were witnessing the building of greatness. Everything counted with Bob Proctor. Everything. This is a fun story to relive and drives home a powerful lesson. Dad was a perfectionist when it came to communicating his work. He was serious about his craft. So when it came to teaching material, he knew he could really impact a person's life. Everything had to be prepared and ready to work with, ready to work together like a practice symphony. You may have thought you were about to hear a motivational speaker when you attended one of Bob Proctor's seminars, but within the first 30 minutes, you knew you were in the presence of one of the most effective teachers alive in the area of mind and paradigms. Every aspect of his presentation was practiced, not rehearsed, and perfected. And what drew people in and made each presentation he gave a unique experience is that he used his intuition and the audience's energy to direct him on how he taught each lesson. It was never rote. It did not matter if he was having a bad or good day, you got the very best that he had that day. And up until his passing, before getting on stage, he would sit in a comfortable chair, relax, quiet his mind, and ask for guidance to have the right words for the audience he was about to present to. My father was a consummate professional. What strikes me even now is that he gave his best even in the smallest details. But as he would often share, the small things make the big things count. Consider, what little thing can you do today that would make you more effective? Remaining committed to your goals and overcoming inevitable obstacles takes work. When you hit obstacles, bring your focus to what you can do right here, right now, at this moment. All actions in the right direction count, no matter how seemingly small. Specifically, in moments of challenge, you want to recognize what you are grateful for. The moment you acknowledge the good, you put yourself into a higher vibration. As we have all heard Bob Proctor say, you are likely only one step away from greatness. Rose-colored glasses. Quote, no one is in charge of your happiness except you. End quote, Bob Proctor. I tend to look at life and the world through rose-colored glasses because I view life this way. I'm often accused of not being a realist. Pause. I have just been accused of the same thing most recently. Won't tell you who, but it kind of dumbfounded me when they said, you are way too positive all the time. Like, get real. Don't you see what? And at first, I'm going to close this for a second. At first, I thought, you SOB, like, how dare you attack my character because I am doing my best to be positive in what's normally a negative situation. But then I thought, right after that, I thought, so proud of myself for the change. If that change is becoming evident, then what I'm studying and what I'm teaching and all those things is changing me. And if I seem that happy that I am looking through rose-colored glasses and my world is always looking for the good, yes, good for me is my conclusion of that little escapade I had. Good for me. I'm changing, and I will continue to look through the world at the world through rose-colored glasses, because that's the only way to be. You are the only one in charge of your happiness, so why join all the negativity that is around us? I know it's there. I just choose not to partake. And you know what? More people need to do that. So, back to the book. That just fired me up for a second. Woo! Sorry. Not sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Okay. So I tend to look at life and the world through rose colored glasses. Because I view life this way, I'm often accused of not being a realist. To my detractors, I say, I live a much happier, healthier, and more productive life because of this conscious choice. There are always at least two ways to look at something. If you try and see the value in everything, my experience has been that you will attract the good into your life because of that choice. On the other hand, I've been with people who only see the negative in every situation or constantly look for what's wrong, and we are always ready to tell you, and who are always ready to tell you about it. Those folks are never pleased and seem to attract precisely what they are focused on, the negative. But of course, when you are in that vibration, negative is all you will see. So, of course, that is what you're going to attract. Once in a meeting, Dad said, any dummy can tell me what's wrong. I want someone to think and tell me what's right. It made me chuckle because there's truth in that. Dad often taught an exercise about the power of writing something 100 times a day. It could be a gratitude statement or a desired outcome that you wish to manifest. It was whatever the mind needed to be trained to see. He would explain how this is similar to the way you would train your muscles by working out. You don't go to the gym once and expect a well-toned body. It takes discipline and repetition. But like your body, you can train your mind. And when you train your mind to look for and find the good and use your will to live this way, you will feel the lightness in your life and you will find that you are better able to handle the things that may have gotten under your skin before. When you are looking for the good in every situation, you can better regulate your emotions. You can choose a different response. It is not about repressing, it is about transforming yourself with a new approach, an attitude. I know I attract more good into my life because I choose to live this way, and you can too. People are attracted to positive energy and want to deal with it and be around someone with positive energy because of how they feel when they are with you. It makes you physically and mentally more attractive. Opportunities will flow your way because of your outlook. Since I was young, I have watched my father respond to situations and rarely react. No matter what it was, good or bad, he would lean into the good. That is where he chose to live, and because of his example, I do too. Once, while discussing an issue that was dominating the news, the first thing Dad said to me was that something good must come out of it. He went on to discuss the universal laws and specifically the law of polarity. According to the law of polarity, everything is dual. Things that appear to be opposites are actually two inseparable parts of the same thing. Think of hot and cold, for example. Although they're opposites, they're on the same plane, and you cannot have one without the potential for the other. You can think of anything you want to attract in the same way. For example, abundance is inseparable from poverty. Love is inseparable from misery, and success is inseparable from failure. Each comes with the potential for its opposite. The best way to apply this principle is to write down any negative you are currently experiencing and then write the positive, the opposite. Once you have the opposite, it is just as easy to give energy to your desired outcome as it is to the negative. It requires discipline to focus your mind on the desired thought, and when your mind wanders to the negative side, you gently bring it back. This is how you create change. This is training your mind. I'm not saying undesirable things won't happen just because you look at life through rose-colored glasses. However, whatever is not good won't last as long, and you will find a better way of getting through it. It comes down to the age-old expression of looking at a glass half full or half empty. You may have heard of my father refer to his friend, Reverend Michael Beckwith, who runs the Agape Church in California. Oh, that's our time to stop. 1 minute. I'll just wrap up page 153 and we'll end on 154. So during their conversations, this is Michael Beckwith and Bob Proctor, Michael said that when something we perceive as bad happens to us, we need to approach it in the following manner. Get a pen and write this down. Go back and redo this video if you have to. Number 1, it is what it is. Accept it. It'll either control you or you will control it. Number 2, harvest the good. There's good in everything. Seek and you will find. Number 3, forgive the rest. Forgive means letting go of completely. Abandon, release. Feel those words just let you relax. Dad loved how Michael phrased this. In fact, he loved it so much that he had Gina create a wooden desk plate, beautifully engraved with those words, and we gave them out at seminars. When you decide you want better in your life, go out into the world and put on your rose-colored glasses. Start with today. Say to yourself, today is the day I will look for, find, and focus on the good in every situation. I will end on there. We're going to be on page 154 on Wednesday. Phenomenal book, amazing lessons. I hope that you are gaining value from. And I hope that you are acting on instead of just acquiring more information, because boy, there is tons of information out there nowadays. Take inspired action and do something with what you've learned today, and it will change your life. Until Wednesday, I will love you and leave you. Bye-bye.